In New York City, there is an entire subset of doctors that will have absolutely nothing to do with the American health insurance industry. So these doctors, obviously they are not in network for any network whatsoever. They also do not take out-of-network health insurance. They won't bill out-of-network health insurance. They basically won't have anything to do with health insurance. They just operate on a cash basis. So you show up for treatment and you ring your credit card, and that's it. And if you yourself have out-of-network health insurance, well, they don't give a shit, right? That's your problem. You know, you can go fight with the health insurance companies and try to get them to pay you, right? They don't want to have anything to do with that shit show, right? That is just all your problem in their minds. And this subset of doctors is not small, and it covers a wide range of doctors. So you have primary care physicians, gynecologists, specialists of all kinds, physical therapists, psychotherapists, dentists, pretty much the whole gamut of doctors that you would, tend to use on a daily basis. And what kind of doctors in New York City tend to go cash only? Well, the really good ones. That's who tends to go cash only, right? We're talking about the kind of doctors that have like long track records of excellence, really deep and loyal customer base, probably quite affluent, that provides like a ton of referrals, right? These are the people that get sick of dealing with the health insurance companies, and they want to step outside that fucked up world and just go cash only. Now, how is this even possible? Well, in New York City is kind of unique in that it has this critical mass of like super rich people and extremely affluent people. Okay, so the super rich people, I mean, these are people like, they don't even need health insurance, right? Like they're so rich, like health events are just a complete non-issue for them. If you have $100 million or hundreds of millions of dollars, and say you even need a surgery that's like $200,000 or something, that's like absolutely nothing to these people, right? That would be the equivalent of giving your kid a quarter to go put in a gumball machine, something like that. No, it's absolutely nothing for them. So you certainly have a lot of those people in New York City, but there aren't nearly enough to form this critical mass, and so you need the second group, which are the extremely affluent people. And in this group, you would find big corporate lawyers, Wall Street dudes, hedge fund people, leadership, CEOs of companies, even like larger nonprofits. And then, of course, you have the administrators of the rot economy, by which I mean all these super overpaid VPs, SVPs, EVPs, C-suite ghouls, within corporate America. So you just have a staggering number of these people in New York City, and these people are important for a couple reasons. So the first reason is that these people are much more likely to have out-of-network health insurance, because out-of-network health insurance is really expensive, and most people can't afford it. These people would be able to afford it for them and their families. But the second reason is that they make so much money that they can afford to float the payments that are necessary in this cash-only network, like to participate in it as a client. And so to give you an example of what I'm talking about, you go to these cash-only doctors and you ring your credit card. Well, if you do that enough times, the credit card bill starts to add up, and that's going to come due at the end of the month. So, say you're going to a physical therapist that you're billing weekly, and you have to take your kid to the doctor, and you had to go to the dentist for a crown and blah, blah, blah. It's like at the end of the month, you could have 4 or 5 grand on your credit card, and the monthly payment comes due, and there's probably a pretty good chance that you haven't gotten any of that money back from the health insurance company. If you've gotten any, it's only probably just a small portion. So you need a class of people for which this isn't a problem, right? You need a class of people that have so much free unallocated cash in their monthly budget that they can just get to this moment and be like, oh, wow, the healthcare was $5,000 this month, and the insurance is a little late. Oh well, and they just pay the credit card, right? We're talking about a really privileged group of people here. So you basically, these two groups enable these cash-only doctors to kind of do this end run of the healthcare system. Yes, they have enough people that can just afford to participate in this. So this is really a New York City kind of thing, if you think about it, right? This isn't going to work in Topeka, Kansas. It's not going to work in Arkansas. I mean, it's like you need the wealth and affluence of New York City. I mean, maybe this kind of thing happens in LA. I don't know, but I mean, it certainly happens in New York City. So, so basically, they get to avoid all the headaches of the fucked up healthcare system, and they get to just shift all of that burden and all of that stress and anxiety, right? They just shift that onto you. Okay, so let's consider some of the moral and ethical issues around this phenomenon of cash-only doctors in New York City. So, first of all, this phenomenon tends to be explained away on the basis of libertarian greed, essentially. And the argument would go something like this, right? People would say, well, if these doctors if they're good enough that they can attract a whole bunch of people that are willing to just pay them cash straight up for their services, well, good for them. That's good. It's, why they don't have to deal with the fucked up health insurance companies. Why would they want to deal with the fucked up health insurance companies, right? Good on them. And I'm sorry, this is just a completely disgusting attitude to have. I mean, I'm well aware that our system of health care and health insurance in this country is just hopelessly broken and ill-conceived compared to what exists in the rest of the world. But that doesn't mean that the answer is for all the good doctors to form a black market, right? Because that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about a black market for, say, the top 3% of earners. Okay? That is just disgusting. And I get it. Doctors hate the health insurance industry. People hate the health insurance industry. I mean, everybody hates the health insurance industry. Of course they do. The health insurance industry is horrible. But pushing all the care into a black market is not the answer. Black markets are not a good thing. Black markets are a sign that society is starting to disintegrate, right? And when societies completely collapse, then all you have is the black market, right? And you're stuck, trading a 24-karat gold necklace for a fucking sandwich, right? That's sort of the end game of black markets. Now, the answer to all this, the correct answer, of course, is that we need to fix the American healthcare system. We need to catch up with the rest of the world and give people health care as a right. And I would go further than that. I would say that the United States cannot handle a hybrid system. We need to give people single payer, free at the point of service healthcare. Okay? We cannot handle a hybrid system. Our system of laws and governance, it is just not robust enough. It's just too fragile, it's too corrupt to handle a hybrid system, like the French system, for example. I mean, a way to think about it is that laws in America are crafted to protect billionaires and corporations, whereas laws in France are crafted to protect ordinary people, right? There's an enormous difference there. So we need single payer healthcare, basically. So let me address a couple of what you might call libertarian responses to the proposition that I've just laid out. Okay, so the first libertarian response to what I just said is, well, no one will want to be doctors, right, if they can't get rich doing it. So my answer to that is nobody wants to be doctor now. I mean, we have a huge shortage of doctors and nurses in this country right now, right? I mean, what would make people want to be doctors is if the system allowed them, to take the time and care with their patients rather than just like being worked to death as a slave of private equity. Like, that's what would really make people want to be doctors, yes? I mean, doctors can't get like stinking rich in Europe, but they still have plenty of great doctors over there, right? So that is just a complete falsehood. Now, the second kind of libertarian challenge would be, well, with free at the point of service healthcare, that's not a hybrid system, then what happens to all those jobs in the healthcare industry when it's dismantled? And my answer to that is those jobs are going away anyway, right? Our techno-feudal overlords are going to eliminate those jobs anyway with AI, okay? So we might as well get something for it, right? Those fuckers don't want to give us anything, right? They just want us all dead. So again, just a complete red herring. So there's basically no reason, why we shouldn't actually fix this healthcare system. And I'll just add one final point. Like, if people were really serious about bringing manufacturing back to the United States, then one of the first things you have to do is get the cost of living down, right? Because that's the only way the cost of manufacturing would be cheap enough. And one of the biggest things you have to do there is get healthcare costs under control. How do you do that? Single payer healthcare, right? That's certainly how every other manufacturing country in the world does it. It's basically how every other country does it, whether they're a manufacturing country or not. But certainly in the case of a manufacturing giant like Germany or China, right? Their workers are not burdened with astronomical healthcare. Right? And it's part of the reason why they can be an export economy. So most of the examples of these cash-only doctors involve like small amounts or small fees being charged to a credit card. And because most Americans are just drowning in credit card debt, and we've been conditioned to just expect almost everything we buy to be subject to some form of usury by some goddamn bank, right? It kind of introduces like a sort of gray area morally around doctors. Like, is this really a problem that doctors' fees would be sitting on a credit card, garnering interest? However, there is one more extreme case that it's important to talk about in some detail. And this involves what happens with psychotherapists within the cash-only network of New York City. Now, I'm going to describe what happens with these therapists by way of kind of a made-up example, but it's going to illustrate the problem. Okay, so say you're working with a psychotherapist and say they're charging $400 a session, which would be completely standard. And say that you're also just going 2 times a week, which which actually is not that uncommon. That's actually like fairly standard also, right? There's a whole host of life traumas that would lead someone to, be working with a therapist, twice a week, at least in an initial period. So $400 a session times 8 sessions a month, and you're talking $3,200 a month. But your therapist is in the cash-only network, so you have to pay them that money at the end of the month. However, these therapists, unlike every other doctor, these therapists don't take credit cards. So that means you have to write them a check for $3,200, which means, of course, that you have to have $3,200 in your bank account. Okay, that is the first layer of the problem. Now, the problem becomes more complicated with the second layer, which has to do with the fact that health insurers are allowed to discriminate against mental health care. And here's the unfortunate reality. So if you're trying to bill a mental health practitioner to an out-of-network health insurer, you're going to be waiting at least 3 months for them to process that claim. Okay, it's an absolute travesty. It's completely disgusting, and I have been told that this is illegal. They are not supposed to do this by law. They're supposed to pay within a month. And what can I say? That's just a complete fucking joke. I mean, 3 months would be good. That would be a good outcome. I know of people that were like stuck with 5 or 6 month waits, in which time they were like fighting tooth and nail to get things paid, right? Because the insurer just tries every trick in the book. It's like, oh, we can't read the number. Oh, your name doesn't have a middle initial, right? They just make shit up to just push it out and out and out. So what that means is that, you see your therapist and pay your therapist for 4 months before you see anything back from the health insurer. So at this point, you've paid out over $12,000 out of your bank account, which if you think about it is just astonishing, right? We're living in a country where, 60-70% of people can't afford a $500 emergency, right? How many people have $12,000 just lying around in a bank account that they don't need? It's not many, right? So, but believe it or not, it gets even worse than that, because if you think about the incremental nature of the payment structure for therapy, right? You pay your first 4 months and you finally get the first month back from the health insurance company, but at that moment you have to immediately pay out the 5th month. So basically you just have that $12,000 is just gone for your bank account from the whole time you're working with the therapist, right? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, right? That money's just gone. So essentially, you're required to give this therapist an interest-free loan of $12,000. And think about the cost to you of having to give that loan, right? You can't invest that $12,000, right? If you had taken that $12,000 like a year ago and bought physical gold, you would have made a 75% return on that investment. That is serious fucking money that you're out, right? So you can't invest it. Obviously, you don't have it around for emergencies, right? You can't fix your car with it. You can't use it for your kids' education. You can't use it to go on vacation. You can't use it to like help pay off your mortgage. You can't do anything. Like you are just like severely inconvenienced, right? Because you have to give out this loan, right? It's a tremendous cost to you as a patient. Now, the question is this a fair characterization that I'm making? Because obviously therapists, they don't see it this way, right? Therapists are just like, they just don't think it's fair that they have to wait, to be paid. And, of course, every other doctor in the world waits to be paid. But because health insurers are allowed to discriminate against mental health care, it kind of seems like this exception, right? And it gives the therapists a way to rationalize their behavior, which is actually like a pretty extreme requirement that they burden their clients with. Okay, so I guess the question really is this an interest-free loan from the point of view of the therapist? And my answer to that is that it is. It is an interest-free loan from the point of view of the therapist. And to see this, you need to kind of look at it this way, okay? Therapists, they posture as if this system of healthcare and health insurance that we have in this country, right? They posture as if this system is just kind of an inconvenience that's foisted on them by the client, right? By the patient, right? It's just some annoying thing that the patient wants them to do, okay? But actually, without this system of health insurance, they wouldn't even have a business, right? They rely on all of these people that have out-of-network health insurance to even have a client base, right? They can't make their business on billionaires alone. Like, they need these people. They need this base of clients who can play this little game, float these cash payments, but at the end of the day, like, it's the health insurance industry that pays for it. So in order to like have their cake and eat it too, they basically punish you, right? By forcing you to make this huge upfront payment, right? As if the dysfunction of the healthcare system was just like some personal request that you were making of the therapist, and not, in fact, like the foundation of their whole fucking business. Now, I think it's also helpful to look at this whole situation through the lens of the Hippocratic Oath that doctors swear. Now, obviously, most psychotherapists are not doctors, but I would argue that they should really swear the Hippocratic Oath because, in a way, they're as important as doctors, especially in a country like the United States that has such an extreme mental health crisis going on, in the country. And so if you look at it through the Hippocratic Oath, I'm going to go ahead and just quote one line from the Hippocratic Oath, which is, "I will willingly refrain from doing any injury or wrong from falsehood." So if you think about what these therapists are doing, okay, they're requiring you to be out $12,000, right, to give them this interest-free loan, a loan that has nothing to do with the treatment or their payment structure, right? It's just over and on top, and you suffer all of the disadvantages of that. Okay, that's harm. That's harm to the patient. Yes? And these therapists know what they're doing, and they kind of write it up. They just dismiss it. They dismiss it out of hand, right? They will not acknowledge it. Okay? And that is falsehood. That's falsehood. So, this behavior of cash-only therapists is completely fucked, right? It should be illegal. And these therapists should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, they really should. And I should point out also that, many doctors, like you see examples of where doctors sort of interpret the Hippocratic Oath in this set of circumstances. Like, I know several cases where people, had serious illnesses, and that cost a lot of money, to treat, and then they just got totally fucked over by their health insurance company, right? They just refused to cover anything, which is of course very, very common in the United States, right? But, what happened in their case was the healthcare provider, just stepped in and ate the cost, just totally ate the cost, just took the loss. Okay, that's the Hippocratic Oath working, right? I mean, the health insurance companies, they're very free and eager to cause harm to their clients, right? But the physician does not have to participate in that harm. The physician could refuse and should refuse on the basis of the Hippocratic Oath of participating in that harm. So, the emergence of this kind of black market healthcare in New York City is like really, really problematic. And, unfortunately, all the rich and affluent people in New York City, like they really like having all the good doctors all to themselves. So no politician is gonna challenge that. No politician is gonna fuck with that. And basically, we just return to the undeniable fact that we have to treat the root cause of this problem, right? The health insurance industry and the health care in this country is just completely broken and completely ill-conceived. And we need to get rid of the health insurance companies as like a for-profit predatory entity in the country. And we need to give people health care as a right. And it's just as simple as that. So anyway, I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you on the next one.